Well, good evening. It is wonderful to be, whoa, you got me on. I am hot. It is wonderful to be here with you. And I want to apologize to you that you got stuck with my old youth minister, Lonnie Jones. I was actually thinking, for some reason, in my head, he was at Plainview, not here at Meridianville. And I know that people probably get that confused probably all the time down through here because y'all are so close, but Lonnie, man, he is a character, and he's got that new grandbaby, and he is actually, I believe he's probably in Georgia right now enjoying her and his daughter and everything like that. So, sorry y'all got stuck with him, though. But before we get started this evening, I do want to say that this is not the first time that I have done this. This content has been so in demand. I have done this. This will be my 29th seminar that I have done in the last 3 years. It is incredible to me that anybody even wants to hear me talk that long, but also wants to kind of get taught about these different things and kind of get parents kind of get hit over the head with this kind of stuff all the time. But what I hope to do with these 5 sessions, we're going to have 2 tonight and 3 tomorrow morning, and I invite you to come back tomorrow morning if at all possible, because each session will build upon itself. And there will be things that are addressed, and we'll have mainly lectures tonight, but tomorrow is going to be really hands-on. It's going to be inside your phones. We're going to have stuff up here on the screen. I'm going to talk about pretty technical things that you can do at home that are very simple, very cheap for you to do to help secure your internet, to help your family with all these different things. I'm going to have a number of links. I've got some materials that I can give away tonight or tomorrow morning if you're not going to be back. And so we're going to be talking about this. This whole thing was designed, this active digital parenting was designed, here we go. We got 2 side screens working, but not the, just do it. There it goes. Okay. It figured out what it wanted to do. This whole thing was designed to empower and energize you as parents. And I am talking primarily to parents tonight. If there's any teenagers in the room, any young people in the room, if you've got kids that you maybe think are too young for this, then take notes, because it is going to be incredibly important sooner than you think. Now, I will say, and put my little disclaimer out there before we even get started, this is by no means comprehensive at all. And if you know anything about all these apps and services and different dangers that are facing your children, all these things, there is no way that I can hit everything. I'm merely hitting the tip of the iceberg with this stuff. It is your job as parents to go home, to do the work. It's a whole nother full-time job on top of what you already have to do. And so managing this it's not easy, but it is a way. There is ways that you can do that. There are certain tools that you can do that. And what you need to understand is that there's not one solution. There's not one app. There's not one service. There's not one website that you can just sign on to and have it do all the work for you. There has to be multiple layers of different things, and we're going to talk even more about that tomorrow morning. But I first want to start, and I want to preface our talk with this, and actually I want to put my information up there. You can email me anytime if you have any questions. You can actually submit a question anonymously if you want to on my website there, Chad L, like Chad Landman, chadl.co, and that is .co, not .com, .co/ADP. And you can go there. I think I have a few downloads on that page, and I'll actually be pointing you to a few of those downloads on that page tomorrow morning as well as we get into some of the more stuff and get into the nitty-gritty of the stuff. Okay? So you can email me anytime if you have any questions or get in contact with me on my website there. I want to preface our talk by first saying this tonight in this introductory talk. This is a parenting issue. Before we blame the screens, before we blame the phones, before we blame the apps, and before we blame the technology, we need to understand as parents that this is really a parenting issue. Some of you tonight know people that probably should be here. Some of you know tonight and maybe think that you don't need to be here, that you think you're pretty knowledgeable about this kind of stuff. Or maybe, and this is what I hear all the time, my child wouldn't do things like that. My child knows better. I've taught them better than that. Let me tell you something. I learned something new, and I will learn something new, and I will hear something new that I've never heard this weekend from you. You will tell me about some app or service or ways that kids are getting around loopholes or something, or using something inappropriately that I've never heard before. And I research this stuff almost nonstop because I have to keep on track of it. I even told the PowerPoint gentleman up there who was loading my PowerPoints, I said, I don't have my PowerPoints ready for tomorrow because I'm still adding stuff that just happened this week. Stuff happens at the speed of light. I learn something new every day. And I know that you want to trust your child. We should want to trust our children. But we can't say, well, they would never do anything like that. Or I've taught them better than that. Because us being church-going Christians and faithful Christians, we need to know that that's probably the devil talking to us. We need to know that that's the devil just in our ear, giving us a false sense of security so that we will be lazy and that we won't do what's important and we won't do what's necessary to protect our children. That's hard to hear. I'm not saying that you shouldn't trust your kids. I'm not saying that you don't know anything. What I'm saying is that it's the devil who is talking to us. And I think that as parents, we say that to make ourselves feel better sometimes. Oh, I know, I've taught my kid better than that. I trust them. I know they wouldn't do that. Maybe so. But it's not your kids necessarily, not your kids that I'm worried about. It's the other parents' kids. And so we need to think about these things. So before we blame the technology, we need to know at its core that this is really a parenting issue. The second, it's not a new issue either. We may think, that the iPhone turned 10 years old last month. You believe that? We've had smartphones and screens in our pockets that could access the internet at the drop of a hat for 10, maybe 15 years. In its current form, just the last 8 to 10 years. You think about that, this is not a new issue. There have been things that distract us for ages. You see all these old men with their faces buried in newspapers on the train going to work in the morning? Well, what do you see these days? People on their phones. And I hear people all the time, I wish these kids would get their heads out of the phones. Well, this is not a new issue, okay? It's the same issue, it's just a different way that we're dealing with it and different screen. The screen is in your pocket that can access literally everything. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. This issue also is not going away. I cannot tell you how many times I've been to and done this seminar or done this talk at a church, and let's just go ahead and say an older person of the older generation pipes up and says, you know what, we just need to go back to them dadgum old flip phones. Right? We just need to go back to those flip phones and we could reverse all this. It's not happening. This is not going away. These smartphones are not a fad. It's not a trend that's going to go away. This stuff is going to get, I don't want to say worse, it's going to get more prevalent and deeper into our lives. We're already wearing devices on our wrists that tell us data about ourselves and our heart rate and all these different things, and I could go on and on and on about that. But it's just going to technology is going to get more pervasive, and your children are going to live in a totally different world than you did. We need to think about these things. This is not a new issue. It's also not going away. Talked about flip phones. Albert Mohler has this quote, and I wanted to read it. I love this quote, and he actually made this quote several years ago. I think it was 2014 he said this. He said, the digital age is upon us. In the span of less than 3 decades, we have redefined the way humans communicate, the way they entertain, inform, research, create, and connect. And what we know now is only a hint of what is to come. We need to understand that it's going to be that way. You think about just 20 years ago. How many of you were in high school 20 years ago? Anybody? Don't raise your hand, Dad. Don't do that. Okay, I was a sophomore in high school 20 years ago. Okay? And you think about 1997. What was the thing that you heard all the time, right? You heard 2 things all the time. Don't talk to strangers, and most certainly don't get in strangers' cars, right? For sure. Well, you fast forward to 2017, and we are literally summoning strangers from the internet to get into their car. That's a fact. I'm going to California next week. They've got Uber and Lyft in San Francisco, and it's going to be super cool. And I'm going to get on my phone and hit the app, and some dude is just going to show up, and he's going to drive me wherever I want. I'm going to pay him. That was unheard of, something like that 20 years ago, let alone doing it with your phone. So think about how much has changed. Think about how much has changed. The question we need to ask, and we're going to get back to that, how much has changed, is why. If you have a Bible on your phone, I want you to turn to Psalm 127, verse 1. Psalm 127, verse 1. This has become my theme scripture for this entire seminar. The first question we have to ask ourselves as parents, as guardians, as grandparents, is why? Why should we be concerned about this? Why should we be paying attention? Why should we care about the Facebook and the Snapchat and the Vine and the instant mess and all this other stuff, right? Why should we care about that? I think there's a biblical answer to every single question that we can ask. And I think there's a biblical answer to this one. And it's in Psalm 127:1. It says very simply, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. You're here tonight because you care about your children. You're here tonight because you care deeply about what they are looking at on these screens, what they are doing and participating in on these screens. You are here tonight because you're the protectors of your home. I have 3 boys under the age of 5 years old. I don't have to deal with the stuff that a 10, 12, 14-year-old parent does yet. I'm not looking forward to it very much. And so tonight, whatever you find yourself in, you need to understand that unless the Lord is building the whole house, unless the Lord has a piece and a part in building every single brick and every single part of your house, including this stuff, if He doesn't have any part in this, then what's the point of building your house anyway? What's the point of building in the first place? The question that we have to ask is your children, everybody has lives online. Your children have lives online. Do you know what they're doing? And if you cannot answer in the affirmative with that question and say, yes, I know exactly what they're doing. I know I can pull it up right here on my phone and see exactly what they've done today. That's what you need to know. You need to know what they're doing. Let's go back to how much the world has changed. Kids in the last decade, they will never know. Kids are born in the last 10, 12, 14 years. If you have let's just do a little demographic survey here. How many of you have a child that is between the ages of 8 and 10? Anybody? Okay. Child between the ages of 11 and 14. Okay. And then let's do 15 through 18. Okay, so mostly teenagers. Anybody younger than that? Anybody have younger? Okay, how much younger? 3 and 7. Okay, so you're fighting it on all sorts of levels. You really are. When we look at this, you think about kids that have been born in the last 10, 12, and 14 years. They will never know a world where they have to use these things. You know what I'm talking about too. Everybody that is older than 30 years old, and the teenagers in the room are going like, what is he talking about? What is this, right? America Online, where you had to sign on to the internet, right? It wasn't just there in your pocket. You pull it up and Google something, right? Google didn't even technically exist yet. And you had to sign on to the internet, and you've got mail. My wife and I watched that movie the other day. It came on television. And it was just crazy seeing the technology back in the late 90s. It's amazing. I told some kids about using a payphone one time when I was in high school, and they were just all kind of looking at me like, what's he talking about? I said, a payphone. You walk into a phone, you put the quarter in, you pay and they're like a pay-as-you-go phone? Like a cell phone? And I'm like, no, not a pay-as-you-go phone, a pay phone. And I couldn't explain it to them. I had to show them a clip from Superman to show them what a payphone was, right? It is amazing how technology has changed. And it's so funny to see the teenagers' faces in here. They're like, is he telling the truth or not? What is happening? It's great. You think about this, though. These are the years that these services first came out. 2007, actually, the latest one there is Twitter. YouTube was in 2005. Facebook was in 2004. I was one of the first 10,000 people on Facebook. and there's almost 2.1 billion people on it now. That's crazy. If your child was born in a year, this year, or after this year, they will never know a world without those three things. It's just mind-boggling. When we think about this, and I wanted to pull this up. This is an old map of Huntsville. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and you can see it's from 1871. Now, when you think about imagine you could go back in time, 1871, and you could go back in time, and you could have your iPhone, and it worked exactly like it did right now. And you could make a phone call. Like that would blow people's minds right there. You could take slow motion video, and you could play all sorts of music apps and all sorts of crazy stuff on your phone. And people think you were a witch, right? They would think that you were a sorcerer, okay? And there would be a crowd around you, and you would say something really, really profound because you'd be the center of attention. You'd say, with this device, I can access the wealth of all human knowledge. And then they would ask the obvious question. They'd say, well, what do you use it to look at? You say, well, mostly just cat pictures. I make jokes. But parents, we are giving 10-year-old kids a device that can access the wealth of all human knowledge. What kind of fences have we put up? You would never, as a parent, take your child to a park. I have 3 boys. One that is just, I love him so much. Let's just put it that way. He's 3 years old, and if you've ever had a 3-year-old, you know exactly how 3-year-olds are. I will give him my sternest dad look. I'll look at him in the eye, and I'll go, come here. And he will smile at me and run the opposite way. That's how it goes, right? Never in my right mind would I take him to a park next to Highway 231 right here that didn't have a fence up and not watch him and just hope that he didn't get hurt. That's the same thing that we're doing with these devices. We're giving these to kids at Christmas with no protections put on them, no restrictions put on them, and say, have fun, hope you don't get hurt. I hope nothing bad happens. We have to let our kids wade in the digital pool ankle deep. We don't throw them into the deep end. We have got to teach them. We cannot just use some excuses. Let's talk about some of those excuses here. I think that we as parents, number one, we realize that we need to never use the excuse that we didn't know. Back in 2007, my first full year of ministry, I simply was not aware of the implications that a minister's taxes had. Ben, minister taxes are super fun, aren't they? Absolutely super fun. And if you have half a brain, if you're a minister, you pay somebody to do your taxes for you, right? Amen. Okay. And so I pay a guy that works at Farm Bureau of Tennessee $230 every single year to do my taxes because they're incredibly complex for a minister. But guess what? When I was living in Virginia, my first 2 years of youth ministry, I didn't know that. And my accountant calls me up and says, you owe $4,500. As a newlywed, being newlywed for about a year and a half, did I have $4,500? No way in the world. Now, what do you think my excuse? My excuse to the IRS was, well, I didn't know. How sympathetic do you think the IRS was? We can't use that excuse as parents. Well, I didn't know that app did that. Well, I didn't know that this could happen using this app, or I didn't know that my child could access the setting. I didn't know that. Sorry. You've got to educate yourself on those things. It is your job to know those things. It is your job to know this phone inside and out. Even if there is no way in the world that you should say, well, I just don't want to fiddle with all that. That is not a valid excuse. In fact, your lack of involvement in your child's digital development will be to their detriment. The less you are involved, the more trouble, the more temptation that they are going to undergo and be in. We have to think, and we have to say, and we have to think about educating ourselves. Number 2 tonight, we need to understand that your child does not yet realize and does not yet have the experience and willpower to keep themselves in check on the internet. We know adults in our lives who do not have the experience and willpower to keep themselves in check on the internet. So why should we expect our 8 and 10 and 12-year-olds to be able to do that? We don't trust our children to drive cars until they're 16 because we as a society have made the judgment that you can't operate a 2,800-pound motor vehicle without being the age of 16. That the society has determined that. And we are so incredibly hesitant to give our kids keys to the car when they're 16 and they've had their license for 2 weeks. And to go across town and eat pizza, and we worry about them constantly. We're, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? But what about these? We have to understand that they can do a whole lot more damage with these. That they can get into a whole lot more trouble with these. If you have a child with an iPhone, and iPad with no parental control set at all, you're just asking for trouble. If you don't have any fences put up, if you don't have that computer or that tablet or that phone locked down, you're writing a recipe for disaster. The thing we need to realize is that we got to hold our kids' hands a little bit. We hold our kids' hands in everything else they do. I was just coming out of the parking lot at Target today, and my 3-year-old wants to... And I grab that hand. Nope, you hold Daddy's hand. We have to hold our kids' hands even when it comes to their digital development. We have to walk that through. We have to talk with them. Just like we talk about sex or drugs or alcohol, we need to throw the internet, we need to throw apps and services and what they're watching and all these things right into the conversation with it. I want to talk to you about some bad things. You know, there's plenty of bad things that we can talk about, but I want to talk about the bad things first so that maybe we can talk about the good things last. As of June 2016, there were 978 million websites. It doesn't seem like a whole lot, does it? Seems like it would be 978 billion, right? There's actually 978, according to the Huffington Post, 978 million websites. Of those, 52,937 are sex sites. You may have heard statistics that say, 60% of the internet is pornography. That's incorrect. That is absolutely incorrect. If you do the math on that, it's more like 4.5% to 5%. Still, if you say 5% of the internet is dedicated to pornography, that's still a big deal. That's not the number that you should be concerned with, though. This one is. 1 in 5 searches made on a mobile device are for pornography. And I pick on pornography because it's what we're all thinking about. There's a lot of other stuff that I could pull out. There's a lot of other things that we could pull out, but I'm just going to pick on pornography for a little bit. And then I got some quotes here from people that are way smarter than me. Adolescents who view pornography feel shame, diminished self-confidence, and sexual uncertainty. You know, not even talking about the Christian angle or the biblical angle here. Do we need our children being more sexually uncertain in this world today? Absolutely not. Porn use by our youth is a greater threat to our national well-being than our economy. If you get connected with porn early in life, it alters your ability to relate. A significant relationship exists between frequent pornography use and feelings of loneliness, including major depression in adolescents. We're talking about ages 13 to 18, kids dealing with depression issues that people when they're 30, 40, and 50 years old deal with. Parents are the weak link in the chain when it comes to protecting their children. This one right here, 5 years ago, it was 11 years old. The average age 5 years ago, in 2012, was 11 years old. The average age of first exposure to internet pornography. Why do you think it's dropped so significantly in the last few years? Access. It's right there. Now, if you had the proper things set on your phone, there'd be a very good chance. There's nothing that's going to work 100%. You might have some things that work 99, 98% effective in keeping your kids out of trouble or keeping them from seeing the things that you don't want them to see, but there will never be a 100% surefire method. Okay? But if you had those safeguards set, we're going to talk about some of those tomorrow. If you have those safeguards set, it might not be 8 years old for your child. When we think about this, a few statistics that I just want to throw out to you. 90% of children have viewed pornography online, most while doing homework. The hours of 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Why do you think that is? Parents tell their kids, schools are telling their kids go on the internet to do homework now. I say now, they've been doing that for years. They have issued iPads that if they're on the school's network, then they can't really access a whole lot. But when they come home, those safeguards may go out the window because it may be only to that Wi-Fi network. Well, what about securing your home Wi-Fi network? Oh, that's too complicated. I can't do that. Really? Is it? Have you looked at that? Have you looked at some of the pretty simple devices? I was actually in Best Buy this afternoon looking at one device that you just plug the thing in and it does it for you. We need to think about those things. 90% or most while doing homework, they're doing it between 3 and 5 before the parents get home. Think about that. You need to have safeguards set on any kind of home computers, any kind of tablets at home, especially when you are not there. 80% of teens 15 to 17 have had multiple exposures to pornography. 89% of sexual solicitations are made to youth in chat rooms, and chat rooms is an old way of saying Facebook Messenger or Snapchat, or all those other different private, quote-unquote, private messaging services. We'll beat up on Snapchat here in just a few minutes. Just don't you worry about that. 67%, I think this is important, admit to clearing their browser history in order to hide internet usage from their parents. They know how to clear the browser history on their internet website. They know how to download apps and things that will hide that usage automatically now. There's something called Firefox Focus. It's made by Mozilla, the same people that make Firefox for your laptop computer, that has a big erase button at the top. And all you got to do is bonk, hit it, and everything's erased. Kids don't need to be using that app. We'll talk more tomorrow a little bit about apps that your kids don't need to be using. This one's a big deal for me, and I'm going to try not to get too much on a soapbox about it. But we need to teach our kids that privacy on the internet, there's really no such thing. Privacy is an absolute illusion on the internet. I'm here to tell you, and I think I have this on the screen here, and when we reference the Bible, Hebrews 4:13 tells us this. Hebrews 4:13 tells us there is nothing hidden from God's sight. In fact, it even goes on to say later, I think in verse 14, that it says, all are naked and exposed in the eyes of God. We need to be teaching our kids that even if they had a 100% surefire way to do something on the internet, or to send a picture, or to send a text, or send something over the internet that was 100% untraceable, you know who still knows about it? God does. We need to be teaching our kids, obviously, first Christian principles. We need to be teaching them that privacy is non-existent on the internet. Anyone with a computer and the right tools and knowledge can get any information about you that they want. I'm not saying that to be dramatic. I'm saying that because it's true. Anybody with the right to turn. Some of you have actually had probably some identity theft issues. Somebody had stolen your credit card number, or stolen your account stuff off of iTunes or whatever. There's nothing that's 100% secure these days. I use Snapchat, and I beat up on Snapchat. And if you can see it here up on the screen, I'm just gonna kind of give you a little bit of a tech lesson on Snapchat. And this is incredibly generalized and simplified of how Snapchat actually works. If you're not familiar with Snapchat, Snapchat is an incredibly popular app with teenagers. Most teenagers I know use it very responsibly. But for the simple fact of that you have no record of any of those pictures or text messages that have been sent, you have no record of them because they disappear after a certain amount of time. That right there should tell you that your child should not be using this app. So let's go over it and let's see how private Snapchat is. They say themselves as the private messaging service. Okay? So I got a little thing up here, and I apologize it's a little small, but first step right here on the far left corner here is you download the app, you sign up for an account, and then that green arrow right there, you send a photo. And then it goes through all these different servers. Okay? It goes through at least 4 different servers. Okay? It'll go through receiving servers, which if you're on the cell phone antenna right now, it'll go to the nearest cell phone antenna and go to those servers. It'll go down into the content servers, which are localized in a general area of the continent or a different area of the United States. Then it'll go to, yes, Snapchat's own servers. Snapchat is actually required to keep at least a record that the photo was sent. They don't necessarily keep a photo, but they keep a record of a photo and the metadata that was sent with it. Then it finally goes to recipient servers, and then it finally gets to your friend's device there. At any one of these green arrows right there, and in fact, any one of those servers. Snapchat's servers have been broken into 3 times over the past 18 months. Snapchat can even tell you what they stole because they don't even know. At any one of those green arrows, though, all that is data. It's data flowing over the lines, over the airwaves, and at any one of those points, anybody with the right tools and knowledge can intercept that data and use it against you. And this goes for everything. This isn't just Snapchat. This goes for everything. But Snapchat is especially dangerous because it's so popular and there's no record, or at least not yet, there's no record of those messages or those pictures. In fact, if you go find a couple of articles at the beginnings of Snapchat, somebody published an article one time about an exchange of emails between the 2 creators of Snapchat, who basically, in no certain terms, says, well, yeah, this is a sexting app then. And they agreed, yeah, that's what it's going to be used for, primarily. You need to be aware of these things. If your child is using this, you need to take a very, very hard look at this app, and you need to determine whether or not you trust them enough to use it. My kids won't be using it. That's for sure. When we talk about privacy, when we talk about Snapchat, when we talk about private messaging, when we talk about doing anything that we hope that no one will see on the internet, I try to use this illustration about a bucket of feathers. Imagine it's a really windy day and you go out here in the parking lot of Meridianville and you got a bucket of feathers. What's going to happen to those feathers? They're going to go everywhere. And you wouldn't have, if you had 3 wide receivers for the Alabama Crimson Tide out here trying to get you all those feathers back, it might not even work. Because they're just going to go everywhere. You're never going to get all of those feathers back in that bucket. And I say that to say that once we have to teach our kids that once you put something on the internet, it is out there. It might as well be like writing it in stone. We have to make our kids understand that just because I deleted all those photos off of Facebook, it's fine. Facebook keeps your photos for 5 years stored on their servers. All the other services like Twitter and Instagram and all the other services, they keep your photos for an inordinate amount of time as well. There never is anything truly deleted on the internet. These companies have terabytes and petabytes of information that they probably have stored on you over the years. These companies are out to make money, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in the next session. Here's some things, and I've got this list right here, and I don't want you to have to write it down furiously, so I'll keep it up there on the screen during the break here, but this is what we're going to end on tonight for this first session. These are things that you can do tonight when you get home. Maybe you've done a couple of these things. Maybe you've done some of these things, but let's go over a couple of these things as parents, what you can do here tonight when you go home. Or after our sessions are over tomorrow, you can do that this weekend. These are things that you can do right now. You don't have to download anything. You don't have to do anything. You just have to use common sense with some of these rules. Go home, make a list of devices in your home that access the internet. Now, I say that, get out the old legal pad, okay, and put a line right down the middle, and on one side you put the device, and on the other side you put what kind of internet safeguards that you have on that device. I think you'll be surprised, first of all, how many devices that you have will access the internet, right? There's refrigerators that can access the internet now, right? That's crazy. When you think about that, think about your TV, think about your DVR, think about your Amazon Fire tablet that got 3 layers of dust under your kid's bed that they haven't touched in 6 months because you thought it would be a great Christmas present, right? Think about the 2 cell phones that you have, one for work and one for personal. Think about all the devices in your home. Make a list of those and then do an audit. Say, this has these kind of safeguards, this has these kind of parental controls, this has a PIN code on it, this has, can't watch anything that's rated PG-13 and up or whatever. But make a list of all those things. And I think you'll be very surprised at the amount of things that you have in your home. Then I say have your home computer, quote unquote, home computer or tablet in a public place. There's really no such thing as a home computer anymore, is there? We have gone so mobile that we've got these tablets that we can take anywhere. Well, it's common sense. Make sure that your kids can't take those to their rooms. In fact, they don't need to take their phones to their rooms either. That's going to make some angry teenagers. But you need to be the parent. Put those protections in place to where they are in a public, you can see that screen and what they're doing at all times. If they want to get on YouTube and watch videos while you're cooking dinner, have them sit in the kitchen with you at the kitchen table. May not be the most comfortable spot in the house, but at least you can see what they're doing. This is the number one regret that parents say all the time to me is that I wish I would have not. I have parents that come to me all the time say, I wish I would have had this rule in place to where my kids couldn't take their phone to their bedroom at night. You will regret that when and if it happens, like one of the ladies at our church told me a story about her 14-year-old son who sent inappropriate pictures to his girlfriend who lived down the street at 2 a.m. Her mother shows up at the door at 2:30 a.m. and says, "What is your son sending my daughter?" It happens. And you can take that completely off the table if you just take that device out of their room and don't let them do it. Take that to their rooms. I have the next one closely related to this. Take up all devices at bedtime. I have kids all the time. I need to listen to music to go to sleep. There's these things we used to have called CD players. They were awesome. Okay? And even more awesome was the tape players. Get them a tape player, right? If you can find one, go to Goodwill and find one, okay? And then I have kids that make the argument, well, I need to use it as my alarm. I got to have it as an alarm. You know how much alarm clocks are at Walmart? $9. I have checked. And they can wake up just like you and I did when we were kids. So they can wake up to that, okay? That will make them appreciate life. Take up all devices at bedtime. Some parents I have known had to lock them up because their kids would get out of bed at 1 a.m., sneak in their bedroom, pull it out of the drawer, go play on it for 30 minutes and send text messages to their friends and watch videos, put it back, and their parents never knew. The only way they found out was that, and this is one of those things, was that I sent them something that they posted on Twitter, and it had the timestamp on it. And they're like, well, that wasn't my child. Somebody must have hacked their account. It's like, no, that's not correct at all. This was your child. Don't be in denial about your kids either. Sometimes they do weird, goofy stuff. Sometimes they do wrong stuff. You did wrong stuff when you were a kid. Don't think your kids are incredible 100% angels all the time either. My kids are not going to be that way, and I hope that somebody tells me that someday too. Take up all devices at bedtime. And this one right here, this number 4, the fourth bullet there, this one is hard to see. It's hard to think about. If you have a child who has done some of these things and you have had to go through some of these things and lock some of these things down and you've had to maybe go to counseling or you've had some of these terrible, awful things happen with this kind of stuff, you've got to be looking for previous evidence. You don't have a choice. And you have got to keep track of your child's movements online. There are a number of tools. I've got a resource guide before you leave tonight. I've got a resource guide of 1 million links that you can look at for different things. I've even got app recommendations. I've got ways that you can contact me on those things. And that, again, is just the tip of the iceberg Some of that stuff is even outdated since I printed it on Wednesday. We've got to keep up with this stuff. We need to look for previous evidence. We're going to be aware of suspicious apps. I'm going to tell you a few of those apps in the next session, in the social media session, but we need to be aware of suspicious apps. If you look on your kid's home screen and you say, well, what does this app do? And you don't know what it does, they don't need to have that app. Plain and simple. The last one there, and this is more of a biblical Christian perspective, is that kids and parents, we need to realize that we need to live our lives online no differently than we do in real life. You need to tell your kids that if you can't say something to somebody's face, don't text it to them. Don't Snapchat it to them. Don't private message them on Facebook, something that you would never say to their face. That's hard, because our kids are growing up in this digital world where they think sometimes that anything I say on this is fine. And that's just not the truth. So we're going to have about a 10-minute break here, and then we'll come back here in just a moment, in just a few minutes. We'll go ahead and get done early tonight. We're not going to go all the way till 9 p.m., but we'll go ahead and start at about 9 p.m., 8 p.m. with our next session. Thank y'all so much for being here, and let's go take a break. Based out of the Middle East, it's not said, I want to show a video. And they started pulling out laptops and running wires, and I thought, oh dear, I better just go back downstairs. So maybe they'll figure it out, maybe not. But in the meantime, y'all think we have it maybe? No? They're like doing this. It's like, it's the same thing. Never mind, I don't want to make a joke about our wonderful government. Anyway, it's the same thing our government does, you know. Let's go ahead. If y'all can't do that, just go ahead and put up the social media PowerPoint, and we'll just do that. And if y'all can figure that out, that'd be great. But if not, I'll find us some way to maybe watch it tomorrow. Basically, it's if y'all have ever seen the video, it's made its rounds on social media many times, on Facebook especially. But it's this guy named Kobe Person, and he actually posed as 15 and 16-year-old boys on Facebook with parents' permission, with them knowing about it beforehand, to see if these girls would do what he asked them to do, to meet them in a public place. One girl, I don't want to spoil too much if we get the video working or whatever. Do you think you might get it? Oh, okay, all right. Well, I don't want to spoil it. We'll be playing it here in just a second. But basically, this video illustrates how naive our kids are today. Our kids are incredibly naive into thinking that everybody and everything on the internet is fine. And everything is going to be... And what we need to teach them is that, you know, back in the day, I made that joke about don't talk to strangers and don't get in strangers' cars. Well, what we need to understand and tell them today is that we don't need to talk to strange people on the internet. We don't need to be talking to... Your kids don't need to be talking to anyone that they don't know who it is. How many of your kids, especially your young men, your young boys, have Xbox Live, PS4, and they have maybe the headset on and they talk with that stuff? Well, that's a pretty big deal, and you'll find that's pretty prevalent. And they'll be talking to people and playing games with people across the world that they have no idea who they are. And what you need to do in that instance is to have them take that headset off and turn the volume up on that TV. Because you need to be hearing what those people are saying. They don't need to be making friends with people that they don't know who they are. Ben actually brought up an app, again, there we go, an app I had never heard of before. And the big trend with the way this social media is going, it's going to almost what I kind of call anti-social media. And that is that the people behind these usernames are completely anonymous. And these places like Yik Yak and Whisper are kind of putting forth that and saying we're an anonymous social network. In the case of, and I'm going to talk about this app a little bit tomorrow, but in the case of an app called After School, it is a geolocated app to where anybody in a certain geographical area, such as a school, can say anything about anybody or anything that they want on any kind of message board. The app has been, yes, I'm getting a thumbs up, okay. The app has been outlawed in California. It's been outlawed in several other states as to where they have posted pictures on the front doors of the high school when kids start school, because they start school later in California and up in the north as well. They don't start the 1st of August, they start like after Labor Day. And they have signs up on the things, if you have this app on your phone, take it off. It's caused that many problems. And so there's a whole list of apps, and we'll talk about those apps a little bit tomorrow that your kids shouldn't have. So I want to go ahead and let them show this video. See, now they're shaking their head. Now they're like, see, I don't even know what's happening. No? 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 Okay. All right. Let's just go ahead and put the social media PowerPoint back up there. And I'm sorry, I apologize for that. I kind of threw them a curveball, but we'll be back onto it here in just a second. When we talk about social media, what are we talking about? We're talking about, it should be self-explanatory, shouldn't it? Social media, and we have to seek answers about social media. You've heard it before that knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, right? The writer of Proverbs 3,000 years ago knew that, okay? He wrote in Proverbs An intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. And social media, just like any kind of technology, it changes at the speed of light. I just gave you the example I heard from Ben tonight of something that I had never heard of before, and I told you it was going to happen. Something I'd never heard before, some new app that has taken a couple, and there'll be different pockets of the country where certain apps are popular and certain apps are not. You'll go to a different part of the country where certain apps are. I'm interested to go to San Francisco or go to California next week and find out what kind of apps they're dealing with out there, because it may be a whole different subset of apps that they're having trouble with their kids and different things like that. Do we have the PowerPoint back up? Are we trying to do the video still, or? Okay, because I've got some quotes that I want to show, but we can actually just go on through the talk here. A couple of things that we need to understand and know and educate ourselves about social media, okay? When we're talking about social media, the umbrella goes really, really wide. You're talking about Facebook. You're talking about Instagram, Twitter. You're talking about any kind of video sharing. YouTube could be a social network because of so many different shares and whatnot. But Facebook really defined what a social network was, 13 years ago. And they're the biggest. And a couple of things that we need to know, and I would have them up on the screen here, but you are the product, not the customer. You're the product, not the customer. And these services, like Facebook, and that's what they are, they're a service. These services like Facebook build themselves as services to you, the customer. Hey, we're giving you a chance to connect. We're giving you a chance, okay? We're giving you a chance to connect. Did I not turn them on? And I have messed y'all all up. I'm so sorry. There we go. Okay. You are the product, not the customer. Okay? These services build themselves, but how do they make all these billions of dollars? You ever thought about that? Well, they make these billions of dollars with your clicks, with your likes, with your retweets, with the ads that they sell you on the side of the Facebook page. That are still trying to sell me knee-high boots from when I was searched on Amazon 18 months ago to buy them for my wife for Christmas, right? And things like that just follow you around the internet. You've seen those things before? You search one thing on Amazon and suddenly it pops up on Facebook. Hey, we thought you would be interested in this. Oh, did you now? Right? And these things are Facebook calls it the social graph. It's so connected that they can monetize. They are monetizing what you're doing, what you're surfing, what you're clicking on, what status you're making, what links you're pasting, all sorts of different things. And the thing that we need to understand is that we are these companies' product. We're not the customer. You need to get your kids to understand that. They're making their money off of you. Without you, they wouldn't make any money. And so we need to understand you're the product, not the customer. Here is one of those that is just one of those. I think my mom would, let me see if I can get it here. Am I having, no, battery's not dead because the laser's going. Oh, okay, that's fine. Nothing is private. We've already went over that, so we'll go ahead and go to, this is one of those things that my mom would call a baduh thing, okay? Well, baduh, right? And so you need to know your child's account and username for any and all accounts. That seems like kind of a, yeah, cool, no-brainer, right? But you would not believe the parents that have no idea what those passwords and those usernames are, right? And I always get the parents looking at their kids awkwardly at this point going like this, right? You need to know, because you need to be able on your phone at any time log in to whatever network is in question, and you need to be able to see exactly what they've been doing. And we can talk about privacy. I have parents, oh my goodness, I have parents that come to me and bless their heart. That's what we say in Alabama, right? When we just absolutely feel sorry for somebody or they're just dumb as a box of rocks, we say bless their heart, right? And when a mom comes up to me and says, I just wonder about my child's privacy. And you laugh. But they are absolutely 100% sincere. They don't want, I don't want to get into my child's personal life. What? that's a whole other parenting issue, but it is your job to know what's going on. It's your absolute responsibility to be your child's protectors. And your child, your child is going to be, some of you are going to make changes based upon some of the things that we've talked about this weekend. And your children are not going to like it. And you know what? They're going to get over it. Because you have a responsibility to protect them. You know, David Shannon talks about, if y'all know David Shannon is a good friend of mine, and he was a preacher at the Mount Juliet Church of Christ up in Tennessee. Phenomenal speaker. He's probably been here. He's been everywhere. And he is actually the president of Freed-Hardeman University right now, which absolutely blows my mind, okay? And he talked about parenting in a class one time that I will never forget. And he said, parents, you have to parent with the end in mind. Now think about that for a second. Parent with the end in mind. When does the end come to you as a parent? My parents are sitting back here in the back of the auditorium, and I'm going to be 36 years old, years young, I guess, in November. They're still my parents. In fact, they'll still get on to me, and they'll still tell me stuff that I should be doing, right? But they are not my full-time parents. They are not seeing me every single day. They're not seeing me day in and day out. And the end comes as parents when your child turns 18 or when your child moves out of your home. For all intents and purposes, you stop being that full-time parent. And it is up to them to go off into whatever they're doing, college, workforce, moving out, whatever. It's up to them to make those choices and make those decisions based upon what you have taught them. And a large part of that in the coming years is going to be what kind of decisions they make on these things. I could quote you a dozen stories about, and you've seen them, you've heard about them, you may even have a close friend or two that it has happened to, that a teacher worked at a certain school and got fired because of a photo on Facebook or something along those lines. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Your child is going to start making decisions. There's even a website that you can go to, and I can't tell you what it is. I think it's the Think Orange website that you can actually go to, and you can type in your child's birthday, and it will give you hours, minutes, seconds, days, and months and years of how much time you have left with them until they turn 18. Don't do that. Because it's even depressing looking at my 5-year-old, how many months I have left with him. I'm like, oh, no, right? They will grow up. They will start to make decisions. You need to protect them while you can. When they are under your umbrella, you need to know, as you might even publish these things on the refrigerator. But there will be no secrets in your home, or there shouldn't be. Let's keep talking here just for a few minutes. Man, this thing does not like me tonight. Here we go. Your child, and this is incredibly interesting, okay? And you think about this for just a second. Your child will naturally gravitate to what is popular with their friends and what you're not using, okay? Now, the data, you nod and you say, and how many of you have kind of bought into the idea that no teenagers are on Facebook anymore? Are you a teenager? How old are you? You're 18, okay. Do you use Facebook? Not at all? Are you even on Facebook? Okay. So you're on it. Do you check it? You don't check it. Okay, well, you skew the data. Anyway, the data overwhelmingly has shown us, though, that while we like to say, oh, well, you know, adults are only on Facebook, right? The biggest demographic on Facebook, anybody take a guess? Ages 35 to 45, right? and there's two people in the audience that go, like that. Ages 35 to 45 is the biggest demographic on Facebook, right? And we think, well, our kids are not on Facebook because we're on Facebook and we're sharing pictures of them when they were 3 years old. And it's like, no, Mom, I don't want you to share those pictures. Please stop embarrassing me, right? Kids are still, they may not interact. He skews the data, but they may not interact, they may not comment, they may not like, but they are checking Facebook almost every day, just like everybody else. Kids are still seeing what you're doing. I want to put up here a few quotes here. and talk about a couple of different things. This is what kids, let me go back. These are quotes that came from actual kids, okay, in a youth group that shall remain unnamed, that they said, this is what they said about these social networks. I asked them what they thought of them, okay? This is what the kids said, verbatim, okay? They said, that's Facebook, that's where my dad goes to complain about stuff. Right? Okay? That's where my dad goes to complain about stuff. This one's good. It's where my mom tags me in photos that I don't want anyone to see. Right? Honey, I scanned these photos. They're from your birthday party when you were 2. Look at those cheeks. Anyway. It's mainly for old people, like my mom and dad, and my grandpa writes on it in all caps. And you know that's true, right? Let's talk about Twitter a little bit. This is where we get a little bit more serious. Because if you listen to what kids actually say about Twitter, and I told them this was going to be completely anonymous, and they weren't going to, they love anonymity. That's the reason why some of these anonymous social apps are really hitting it right now. But if you ask these kids what they think about this, look at this. It's the social network my parents don't know how to use. It's true, isn't it? Well, I don't know what a Twitter is. Let's be honest, but the last 6 months have educated y'all more on Twitter than ever before in your entire life, hasn't it? Because guess what? Donald Trump is on it, right? The only president in history to make major announcements in 140 characters or less, right? Just don't even get me started. It's basically the Wild West of the internet. Pretty much anything goes. That's funny. Do you agree with that? You're laughing, but do you agree with that? You're not on it? Are you not allowed to be on it? Good. Very good. Twitter is where my parents can't keep up with me. This is from actual kids that are actually on Twitter, probably still are. It's where my parents can't keep up with me. That's why I'm there. It's where I can say what I want to without being judged, and nobody knows who I really am. That should tell us something. You know, we have our kids that are using these devices to tell the world about how they feel. But they won't come and sit in the living room and tell us about their day. That's sad. And so we as parents, obviously it always goes back to the parenting issue. If we are doing our job as parents first, if we're listening to our kids, if we're taking an active role in their lives, if we're doing things that upset them, then good. There are some parents that just cannot bear to have their kids upset with them. Oh, what about their privacy? What are you talking about? Your kid is not your friend. They are your responsibility. We have to understand these certain things. I had a couple of apps that I wanted to mention to you about social media here. And you can write these down, but we're going to go over these and a whole lot more. I got a little teaser there. More most dangerous apps for kids tomorrow morning. Okay? So make sure you come back tomorrow morning. We'll talk a little bit more about these. After school, I've already talked a little bit about it. It's a geolocated anonymous social network. Whisper is also an anonymous social network. A girl was in Washington State was lured to a park with Whisper, and she was subsequently raped. That was from an actual news report out of Seattle in 2015. Kick Messenger is a lot like Snapchat. You can be anonymous on there. You can delete stuff. You can send inappropriate stuff. It can't be traced necessarily through official text messaging channels and whatnot and all these other different things. It's hard to track. It's hard to keep up with. And then the last one right there, Yik Yak, is also a lot like After School. And oddly enough, and I don't know if this is still the case, but oddly enough, this is incredibly popular at my wonderful college that I went to, Freed-Hardeman University, with a bunch of college kids. Now, any of these social networks can be used responsibly, but let's be honest, most of the time they're just not. Anytime you have 14-year-old boys involved in something, you cannot put the word responsible in that sentence. When we think about these things, the last thing I have on this list right here, we're talking about social networking, is be where your children are. Do you know how many apps and services and user accounts they have? Do you know how many members of social networks that they are members of? Do you have a list of those? If you don't have any clue, if you don't have any idea, then you need to get a list down. You need to make sure there's actually, I'm going to have a download ready tomorrow morning on my website. If it's not up there right now, you can go to chadl.co/ADP and you can find out there's something called a parent-child device contract. And a woman gave her son, her 15-year-old son, an iPhone for Christmas. But before she gave that to him, she got that phone, she ripped it out of its package, and she went for hours using that phone and securing that phone before it ever got into the child's hands. And she had a list of 18 rules. Some of them are kind of funny, some of them are very, very practical, and others are incredibly poignant. And you look at those, and the very last rule on that list, on that document, says, I am going to take your phone, and you are going to get punished, and we're going to talk about it. That's not a question of if, it's a question of when, because it's going to happen. There has to be consequences for the behavior that your children have on these phones. And you know, a contract, you can put it up on the board, you can have your kids sign it and everything. It doesn't do it any good unless you actually enforce those things, unless you stay on top of those things. We're going to talk tomorrow about a lot of tools and a lot of different things that you can do that most of them are actually built right into your phone. And you can use those to your advantage. Most of them are very, very simple to set up. Some of them cost a couple of bucks a month. They cost as much as something going to Starbucks or McDonald's would cost per month to help protect your child. Would you spend $7 a month to potentially keep your child away from some of those things? I think you would. And so we need to be cognizant and educate ourselves. And I keep saying that over and over is because we as parents have to do that. When we think about social networking, when we think about these different things, that's what we're going to be looking at. And looking at these dangerous apps, you know, we can talk about, these are kind of the anti-social apps. I don't think I have any slides. I have two links up here that you can look at. And both of these I recommend. The one on the bottom, actually, for parents, I actually have a number of flyers that they sent me. I have stacks, and I'm just going to leave the box with you guys so you can give it to all the other parents here at Meridianville. But this is an ad. It's not just one app. It is a suite of apps that actually protect and manage your family while they're on the go. There's an app on here called the Spin Safe Browser. It will help it will allow, you can actually go into your settings. We're going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow, but I'm giving you kind of a preview. You can go into your iPhone settings and you can say that you don't want your kid to be able to use Safari, and the icon goes poof, it goes away. They can't get on any kind of internet. And if you disable downloading of any apps, they can't download another browser. So their phone becomes a texting and phone, an actual phone for once, right? They have a Spin Safe Browser where you can actually, a safe internet experience for all ages. There's something called Parental Board that's $4 a month, that if you subscribe to it, you can actually look and locate and monitor all this different content about what websites they're looking at, about what text messages they're sending, all sorts of different things, what apps they're downloading. There's one for your drivers out there. If you have older kids who are becoming drivers, there's one called Lifesaver. If it detects that the phone is moving more than 5 miles an hour, it disables the phone except to make 911 calls or calls from you. So if you call, nobody else calls, but if you call, it's awesome. Now, I've been in contact with these people because they actually reached out to me and found my stuff on the internet, and they just wanted to send me a bunch of flyers. And so I checked out these apps and looked at them. And again, I want to reiterate, there is no one solution out there. And we're going to talk about many different types of layers of security, layers of solutions that you need to have in place. And let me tell you, it's a full-time job. But you as the parent have to do it. So I've got these flyers up here. Feel free to come up here and pick one up. I'm going to leave the stack here in the back of the auditorium as we get done tonight. If you're not able to come back tomorrow, make sure you grab one of those and take a few of them. Take 10 of them and give them to your friends. I don't get any kind of kickback or any kind of monetary advantage for any of that. It's just an app that actually works. And there's so many that you can choose. You type in parental controls or parental controls on your Android phone or on your iPhone, and there's 100 apps that come up, and you don't have any idea what any of them do. You don't have any idea of what any of them, the quality of the app or who built it, or if it's even actively developed. These are actively developed, and they're very, very good. I want to open it up to a couple of questions. We're looking at about 8:25 here, and I wanted to kind of break the ice with social media, but we actually be talking a lot about about different services and different things like that tomorrow. But I did want to answer any kind of questions that you might have tonight, especially if you're not going to be able to be here tomorrow. So does anybody have any kind of questions, any kind of gripes or moans or complaints or anything like that?
Tomorrow, are you going to talk about, I have 11-year-old boys who don't have smartphones yet.
Okay,
I
good.
want to know about things like their Kindles.
Okay.
And how to lock those down. And without, okay, so one of them, the Kindle came in the mail and I locked it down, and then he took it to school and he can't get on any of the websites the teachers want him to get on, and now I can't figure out how to unlock it. I really don't. So the other thing is, I didn't put anything on it because he's going to be able to get this stuff on school. I don't know what to do.
Oh, okay. Do you have the device? Can you bring it tomorrow? I'll try to hook you up then. All right. Again, I don't make any I don't make any guarantees that I can help with anything, but I bet you that I can find the answer, and I bet you that I can find somebody else who knows the answer for sure.
I need help knowing exactly how much to lock. I mean, I don't know what to do. So
Well,
I can use it at school and not get.
Well, I'll tell you another thing we're going to talk a lot about tomorrow. And me as a nerd, a tech nerd, I know all the ins and outs of these different devices and the differences between Apple and Android, and the average person going in there, probably most of you, and I'm not making fun of you for this, it's just you're an average person. You go into a smartphone store, a Verizon store, and all the phones are the same, right? They just do all the same thing. They have the same apps, right? That is not the case at all, because Android and Apple have very different ways of looking at internet safety, and we're going to talk about that. So both of them are good. They both have advantages. Both of them have disadvantages, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Amazon is actually a little bit, when you talk about the Kindle Fire devices, Amazon has done what not really any other company has done. What all the Android phones, when you see a Samsung phone, when you see an LG phone, when you see any kind of Android Google phone, it's all going to have a skin of Android on it. And what you find in Amazon devices is they took Android, but they absolutely rewrote everything about it. And it's almost Amazon's own operating system. It's so different, it's a little bit limited on what you can get on certain Kindle Fire devices because those things are dirt cheap. So it's a little bit of a different ballgame when you're talking about Kindle Fire devices in particular. Now, I'm not saying they're bad, and I'm not saying that Android is better than Apple or Apple is better than Android. I'm just saying that you need to know the advantages and disadvantages of both of them, and that's what we're really going to talk about a lot tomorrow morning as well. Any other questions?
Okay, I really don't understand the exact thing.
Neither do I.
I mean, like, what?
What's the appeal?
No, what is it?
What is it? It's a, anybody know about Yik Yak? You know about it a little bit? What do you know?
Know that you can post things and you're completely anonymous, and then other people around you can see what you posted if you're in your area.
When I say geolocated, that some of these apps put a geofence around you. And they'll say within a 1 mile radius of your GPS location, everybody that is on Yik Yak or everybody that's on that app in that certain geolocation can have access to see what you see, and you can have access to see what they see, and vice versa, and what everybody's posting. What's that?
But it's anonymous.
But it's anonymous. Unless you use your real name, it's anonymous.
So, like, I go to Free now instead of 20 years ago. And, I mean, I just anonymously like.
You know what they use it for at Freed?
What?
They have something called Chapel Chat, and every time they go to chapel, you can just see the comments coming through with all the students, and they'll either make fun of whoever's speaking, or make fun of who's leading singing, or make fun of and it's usually, I don't want to speak ill of Free Hardman or anything. It is the school I went to, and usually it's fine, but sometimes it gets a little bit out of hand. It's never vulgar or anything nasty like that, but it's usually just they're poking fun at it and they're having a lot of fun Because back in my day, even 10 years ago, you were seen using anything in chapel and you were counted absent. And now they just hit that little card, beep, and they're there automatically and they can do anything they want to in chapel. Bunch of heathens. I'm just kidding. Xander, you go to Freed-Hardeman? You're going to go to Freed-Hardeman? Oh, man, it is. You're going to have so much fun. Oh, man. Just don't major in girls your first semester. Yeah, just don't do that. Second semester. Any comments, any questions, anything that you would like to share? Yes, sir.
Is there an aspect that you're going to talk about, I know this is an active parenting thing, about the dangers of it, but about positive uses? Because I know, as a youth minister who's been one for 20-something years, the level of interactivity
Oh, yeah.
is so much better now.
Oh, yeah.
I get texts, hey, what time does this start and all this kind of stuff. Is there something you're talking about positive things that we adults can do and interact with our kids with? Because it is a very good tool. I mean,
Yes.
everything from, when there's an active shooter situation, you can check in, you can do, and you just wait till they came home or they're going to come home.
Right. And, well, I often pose the question about positive uses of technology. Obviously, this is a tool. These devices, you can reach thousands, if not millions of people with these. Now, you think about what the Apostle Paul would have done with Facebook. You think about that for a minute. You think about what he would have done with Twitter. You think about what Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John would have done with something like Medium or something, a blogging platform or their own website. You think about what they would have done and how much of a positive impact and many more people they could have reached with those mediums if that stuff had existed today in their time. And that is what, and I meant to kind of say that. We've got to teach our kids to use this in a positive way. We've got to teach our kids that this is an incredibly positive thing that we can use to benefit for the glory of God. You can glory. You know what and I got this from Lonnie Jones because most of the stuff I get in my life is from Lonnie Jones, I guess. But I got this from Lonnie Jones actually, and you know what is the number one thing? I could post something about digital parenting. I could post something about Snapchat. I could post all these articles and spend weeks and weeks writing these articles and post them on Facebook and everything. But you know what gets the most response out of anything on Facebook is one simple phrase when I put it on there from time to time. All I say is, how can I pray for you today? It gets more response than anything I ever put on that network. And it's incredibly positive because every time one of those comments comes in, I'll pray for that person. That is a literal time. We always go around saying, well, I'll pray for you. I'm praying for you. Are we really praying for them? We could really we could really take the world by storm if we used these social networks properly. If we used them for only positive messages. And that's kind of why, it's interesting that you should mention that. One of my New Year's resolutions in January, I put that thing in that kid said about it's where my dad goes to complain about stuff. I'll be honest, I used to be pretty negative on Twitter and Facebook. I mean, it'd be every time, I can't believe this and that. Well, I had this bad experience. Well, this bad thing happened to me. Well, this person said this bad thing. And I had a New Year's resolution to say, I'm only going to put positive things on there. And if I choose to post those things, I'm only going to put positive things on there. And let me tell you something, what I put on those networks greatly decreased. Because we always think about the negative stuff, don't we? And it's just you scroll through that time, and you scroll with your finger through that time, and you just see negativity after negativity after negative, bad thing after bad thing after bad thing. Especially, and don't even get me started about what happened last weekend. What kind of different, we can make an incredible difference if we just remain positive. Share a Bible verse. Ask people, how can I pray for you today? And you might be floored with the response that you get. But yes, there is incredible, and I will talk about that a little bit tomorrow about positive uses. and even positive ways to keep in touch with your kids. Some of the stuff I hear with the 4 parents thing, the parental board thing, is like your own little private family social network. It's really neat because you can just get on there. You don't have to worry with text messages. You don't have to worry with Snapchat or Facebook Messenger or anything like that. It's just your own private little network with your 4, 5, 6-person family. Any other comments? Any other questions? Mm. It's needle in the haystack. It really is. It really is needle in the haystack. If you type that in and go, now if you dig and if you research enough, you can find some good stuff. Let me tell you what has been the most beneficial to me, and this is so odd. But I'm not a youth minister, I'm an education minister. But every now and then I'll ask John David Schwartz, our youth minister, I'll say, can I just have one Wednesday night with the high schoolers? And I'll go in there and ask them in all confidence, confidentiality, anonymous. I'm not going to quote any, I'm not going to go run into their parents. But I'll go in there and talk to them. Hey, what's popular with you guys? What apps are you using? What things are you seeing? I heard about a kid, and this is a kid going to a Christian school, a Christian private school, that was being actively blackmailed with Snapchat. At a Christian private school, member of the church, baptized, 15-year-old being blackmailed with Snapchat by somebody who was at the local public school who had some type of incriminating stuff on him and was kind of dangling it out there like a carrot. So I'm going to send this to everybody you know unless you do this certain thing for me or give me this. Blackmail. And it happened. And I would have never found out about that had I not just sat down with a group of 40 teenagers and said, hey, what are you guys dealing with? What issues, what apps, first of all, what apps are you using? Second of all, what things you do. Now, I'm not saying that you have access to doing that, but I tell you what, a good resource is to talk to your youth ministers. Because those guys are on ground zero. And they're dealing with all that stuff. And ever since two and a half years ago, I took the education minister job, and I've been concerned with getting teachers for classes and things like that, and curriculum and things like that. And I don't do a whole lot with the youth anymore. And boy, when I talked to those teens again, I had lost touch. It had only been 6 months or a year. And so you need to be constantly, obviously, having an open and a dialogue with your kids. You need to be talking with your kids. You need to be open and honest with their kids. If the more open and honest you are, the more open and honest they will be with you. But at the same time, use other resources. Use youth ministers. Are you a member of the youth ministers ministering ministers on Facebook or whatever it's called? I can't remember. I can't remember what it's called.
Several youth ministers groups. I don't know
Okay. If there's public youth minister groups, just scroll through some of those when guys post on there, and every now and then it'll come up and say, my kids are really struggling with this app or really struggling with this. Go to my website. I post things there from time to time. I write for starttofinish.org, and I usually do an article every month for them about different things, about what kids are dealing with, those different things. And I wrote an article about the blackmail through Snapchat thing, so you can find that on there as well. But yeah, it's just a lot of digging, and you need to almost get just a list of resources that you trust and that you check from there on out. It's a lot of work. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm a homeschooler, and everywhere I go, Covenant Eyes is just like bam in your face everywhere. So, is it really worth it?
Covenant Eyes is great on a laptop computer or desktop computer, if your kids are still using one of those things, right? But they don't have a really great presence on phones and tablets now. There's a lot more tools that are a lot better at different things than that. In fact, I don't think I have it in that resource guide, but if you want to write this down, it's an app called Kirby, C-U-R-B-I, Kirby. And again, some of these are going to nickel and dime you to death, but I think it's $5 a month. and it's very easy to monitor everything that's going on your child's phone. So you have the app on your phone, you set up the app on their phone, they talk to one another. You can set time limits on the phone. You can set time limits for certain apps. You can see what apps they opened, what apps they downloaded, what text message they sent, what phone calls they received, all that stuff. And so it's really good. And there's any number of tools. The parental board, the 4Parents stuff does that same kind of stuff too. And I'll tell you what, this may come as a surprise to you, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the morning. But I'm actually recommending, as of right now, I'm an Apple guy through and through, but I actually recommend if you're looking for a new phone for your kids to get an Android phone. Because Android allows much deeper control. I got a guy up in the booth is going thumbs up right up there. They allow much deeper control through third parties and services and things that you can control all sorts of things. Apple just kind of has some of that stuff gated off. Anybody remember I think it was probably a year and a half ago, the San Bernardino case with the terrorist, where Apple wouldn't give up the text messages or open the phone because they couldn't. Because they had built their software so well that even they couldn't break back into it or decrypt the text messages that were on that phone. They couldn't do it. And there's something to be said about that, having that grade of security. But when it comes to your children, and I've had this happen as well, there's been moms come up to me and say, my daughter has locked me out of her phone. And I say, how has that happened? Do you not know her PIN code? Nope, she changed it, and now she won't tell me what it is. Exactly. Take her phone and throw it in the lake, right?
And when you're 30, you have another phone.
I'm telling you. And then don't think the Graymere parents are absolutely nuts. This is not just Graymere parents. This is parents that I've seen all over the place that have told me about all these different things. There should never be they should never even had a chance to change the PIN code. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that on exactly how to secure the device to work to your advantage tomorrow morning. There's a little teaser to come back tomorrow morning. Yes, sir.
I've got a question for you.
Oh, here we go.
How do you keep PIN code, just like you said, the instance you just gave, the kid changed the PIN code, and her mother couldn't get in the phone. Okay, the mother can lock that out again, maybe if she could get her to give her the code, And she goes off to school, and she gets with one of her nerdy buddies like you, in 30 seconds, they're back in it. And change it.
Not unless they know that code. You know, in the San Bernardino, and I keep bringing up the San Bernardino. Well, what'd you say? There is ways of doing everything. However, when you look at the 6-digit code that was on the San Bernardino iPhone, the FBI could have hooked that up to a decryption program and could have brute forced that phone, but it would have taken them years to do it. That's how encrypted these devices are. Even with when you go from a 4-digit passcode to a 6-digit passcode, your odds just go crazy out the window of what it could be. And they could try every single one of them and brute force that, but the phone is just not going to let you do more than 10 attempts anyway. So it would have taken them years to figure that out. So if the FBI can't break into it, then some nerdy college kid I don't think can either. Now, saying that child should have never been allowed to change that PIN code in the first place. And how do you do that? Well, you set up your first wall, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow morning. You're getting a special preview, I'm telling you. You set up your first wall, and that is restrictions on your device. You set up the restrictions on the device so that they can't change anything about the security settings on that device. I'm going to show you screenshots. I'm going to show you, if I can hook it up with y'all, if y'all have Wi-Fi in here, I'm going to show you on my phone what you can do to set up those restrictions, both on your iPhone and Android device. And so it's as I say, it's very easy. It can get a little complicated when you get into all these different PIN codes because you've got to secure this device down. But what you can do is what I call the fingerprint trick. Most of these phones now, anything past the iPhone 5S, has that little fingerprint reader. You as a parent can make that work in your advantage, because all your child has to have to get on that phone is one little fingerprint. And so that's fine. The thing about iOS on iPhones, it allows you to do up to 5 fingerprints. So you have your child as one fingerprint, you have yourself as one fingerprint, maybe even your spouse as one fingerprint. That's 3 fingerprints with 2 left over to have a space for. You make the PIN codes, both the restrictions PIN code and the regular PIN code to get on the device, like right here, when it says right here, my PIN code, when it says my PIN code to get on the device, plus the restrictions PIN code. You make both of those PIN codes and do not ever tell your child about them, and they can still get on the device. But you set it up in the way that they can't change anything about the security settings. That they have to have that PIN code to change anything on the phone. They have to have that PIN code to sign out of the phone and sign back in on their Apple ID or whatever, Google Play ID or whatever it is. You have to have a PIN code to pretty much do anything on the phone that is required for anything. Now, there are certain things that we can talk about a little bit tomorrow that you can do to help you in the aspect of downloading apps and certain things like that, especially paying for apps, and we'll talk about those a little bit tomorrow. But you can use little loopholes like that to your advantage, like the fingerprint reader. Okay, so anything else? Any other questions? Comments, concerns? All right, it is 8:45. Let's have a prayer. I hope to see all of you, your happy faces, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And we're going to talk a little bit more about stuff. Bring your notebooks, bring your phones, bring your devices. I don't care. Bring your Kindle Fire tablet. Bring your router with wires hanging out of it. I don't care. I will try my best to help you in whatever situation that you might find yourself in. But let's have a prayer. And I'm going to ask Ben, if he would, to lead that prayer. And then we'll be adjourned for the evening.
Very thankful for the honor and privilege that you've given to us as being your children, and those of us who are parents to raise children, Father. Pray that you bless us as parents, that we may learn the best way that we can protect our children, help them to learn to use all this wonderful technology for good, that we may reach and encourage and build up others. Father, I pray that you would be with those who are suffering with problems that the abuse of the internet has caused. Pray that you would help us to always be ways that others are blessed and that they are never harmed. Pray for Chad and all the good work that he does. Continue to be with him. Pray that you would be with us as we return tomorrow. We pray that many more will come, that they can also learn this very important information, Father. We pray most of all for all of our children and every young person that we will interact with. The ultimate goal is that they will get to heaven, Father, and we pray that you would help us as adults and as parents to do all that we can to help them achieve that goal. Watch over us and keep us, Father. Forgive us when we fail you for it. We know it is often. We pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Hope to see you tomorrow morning. I have these flyers up here if you'd like to come get one. Thank y'all so much. Hey,
What's up, guys? I'm Kobe Person. How easy is it for a pedophile to pick up an underage child using social media? Well, today we're going to find that out.